Dana, you're muted.
Thank you, Danielle. Classic mistake. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Advisors Academy Coffee and Conversation. My name is Dana Saunders. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the director of the Students First Office here in the Division of Student Success. And one of my responsibilities is coordinating our regular professional development for academic advisors at UNCG through our Coffee and Conversation series. So I'm excited to have with us this morning several faculty members from the Mathematics and Statistics Department here at UNCG, who will be sharing with us some updates and information about a new math curriculum that's really officially rolling out this coming fall, along with our Minerva's academic curriculum. So those sort of nicely align, and I know we got to hear all about that at our last edition of Coffee and Conversation. As always, I'm recording this and we'll post to the Advisors Academy's website. So if you have colleagues that weren't able to be with us this morning or want to go back to review or refresh the information and the conversation that we had, you'll be able to access that in just a couple of days following today's session. And I'll also just send a reminder that as you have questions, please don't hesitate to put those in the chat or unmic yourself and share those directly. But without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Tracey Howell and her colleague, Beth Lewis from Math and Statistics.
Good morning, everybody. Let's see if I can share the screens right, because we got to do that right. Okay. So can you see my screen? Excellent. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lewis.
Hi, I'm Beth Lewis. I'm one of the faculty members in the Math and Statistics Department, and I've been working with Tracey and others on various projects that we have going on for the Math Pathways project. And one of the big exciting things that we're doing here is some really significant curriculum changes and updates to existing curriculum as well. And so we're excited to be able to talk with you about that today. And Tracey's going to get started with us, so I'll turn it over to her.
Okay, so just an agenda so that we can kind of keep things on track. We have basically three and a half things we want to hit with you this morning. We want to talk about the changes that are impacting the STEM majors, specifically bio majors. We want to talk about, again, who needs to take the Calculus Readiness Diagnostic Test. We have changes impacting our business students. And we also then want to talk about what do we do with our other majors. So we want to kind of just hit all of those things. So to get us started, this is already in place. Just wanted to bring it back up so that we all are kind of on the same page with the starting point for our students that have to take calculus. So recall that prior to last fall, we had that 2-semester pre-cal sequence, that 150, 151. And as a part of the Math Pathways initiative, we want students to be through their first course that counts in their major during their first 30 hours that they're on campus. So for STEM folks, they need to go through Calc 1. Well, they couldn't take a 2-semester pre-cal sequence and Calc 1 in the first 30 hours. So the solution to that was to do away with that sequence. And then we realigned and re-envisioned what Math 190 would be. It's now our 1-semester prerequisite course for Calc 1. Okay. All right. Then coming up in the fall, to better align with the community college system and all of our other system institutions. We were one of the only institutions that had 4 3-credit-hour calculus courses. It made it really difficult for transfer, especially if someone takes part of the sequence at one school and then part tries to come here or tries to go from here to somewhere else. So as of this fall, we will have the 3 4-credit-hour classes. We're calling them 196, 296, and 396. This will make transfer easier between institutions. So now our students that come in that are STEM majors, they're going to come in, they're going to take the College Readiness Diagnostic Test, so CRDT, and it's going to place them into one of 3 places. It's either going to tell them to take pre-calculus, Math 190. It's going to tell them to take Math 196, which is the new Calc 1 with the co-requisite course 181, or it might say, hey, just take Calc 1, 196. Okay. Please interrupt me. I'm good with questions. Okay. Now, so in the fall, what we wanted to do was we wanted to introduce a sequence of courses that would be better suited for the folks that are going to major in bio. Currently they take, well, they used to take like 150 if they were a BA major, BA bio major, and they took 151 if they were a BS bio major. And that really just didn't suit exactly their needs. And so what we've done is we have created a new set of courses for them. They're 183, that'll start in the fall, and then 184 will start in the spring. The first one is Mathematics for Life Science. It kind of takes the place of that pre-cal. And then the second one, 184, takes the place of the calculus. It's the Calculus for Life Sciences. And so this is the little flow chart that you probably will want to keep and refer to. It is complicated, but yeah. So if the student comes in, freshman with credit or transfer student, if they don't have credit and they're on the BA or BS bio track, then we want them into the 183 course. If they think they're going to be a BS major, again, 183, and then the next semester they'll take 184. If they come in and they have credit for that college algebra pre-cal, that, so it would have been like our 115, our 150, 151, 190, just somewhere in that pre-cal sequence. If they come in with that credit, it's going to be a little bit more involved because we want to think about where the student's going to go. The student that comes in with that credit as a bio major has two choices. They could either, if they have pre-calculus credit, they could go ahead and take 183 and 184. Okay, because those are the ones that are designed for our bio folks. But if they have that credit, they technically could, think about going into the regular calculus sequence if they choose to do so. So there's a little bit of, we got to think through with them. It's a lot's going to depend on what their future plans are, whether they think they want to go on to grad school, those kind of things will be kind of in play as to whether or not they want to just do the 183, 184, or whether they would rather go into the regular calc sequence. Okay, but in this slide will be a very helpful one to kind of keep on hand. Okay, so let's see. So all of that together brings us to who's going to take the calculus readiness diagnostic test. And so this one is specifically for incoming students, but honestly, it works for all students. If you go down into, I'll point to it in a second, one of those boxes where it says transfer, if you take the word transfer out, it works for everybody. But basically the idea is the students come in, are they thinking about majoring in STEM? If at all they think they're going to major in STEM, tell them to take the calculus ready. Change. If they at all think they're going to major in STEM, ask them if they're going to major in biology. If they're going to major in biology, then they do not have to take the calculus readiness diagnostic test because we've got this brand new sequence for them and that's where they go. Okay. If they say they want to major in STEM, but they don't say biology, go take the calculus readiness diagnostic test. Okay. So say they want to major in STEM, ask them if they want to be a bio major. If they want to be a bio major, send them into 183. If they say, no, just another type of STEM major, then tell them to take the calculus readiness diagnostic test. Okay. If the student comes in and they don't say they're going to major in STEM, and so they're not thinking that's where they want to go, so their answer is no. So I'm looking at this, the right side of this flow chart. Basically, we just check their program, see if they need to major in calculus, or see if they need to have calculus for their major. If they don't take the calculus readiness diagnostic test. If they do, then again, it's that kind of look and see what they have transfer credit for. If they have transfer credit for 190 or the old 151, then they're good to go. They don't have to take the calculus readiness diagnostic test. But if they don't have that, if their major has calculus and they don't have that credit for that pre-cal, then they do need to take the calculus readiness diagnostic test. Okay. And I'm going to stop right there. That's all the STEM stuff. Before Beth starts on the other folks, anybody want to ask questions about that part? We good? All right, I'll turn it over to Beth then.
Go ahead and go. There you go. All right, so our new, another new course that we have coming out this fall is specifically designed for the business majors. So anybody who would fall into that business category that is typically heading for the Math 120, which is the calculus with business applications or business calculus. We have a new course that's more appropriately designed for students going into business, and in particular with their eye on the Math 120 course. And so traditionally these students have been in our college algebra course to begin with, the Math 115, but we were finding that that course was not as successful as we would like and especially for this particular group of students. And so we designed a course, we're calling it Algebra with Business Applications, to parallel the calculus, business calculus idea. And this is going to be the prerequisite for the calculus with the business calculus. So Math 118 is still going to be covering the algebra skills necessary for success in the calculus, the business calculus course. But it's going to package it in a much more relevant way. And so we're going to have those algebra skills, many of which the students, really all of which the students have already been exposed to in their high school curriculum. But we're going to package it in a way that students can take a look at those topics that perhaps they've seen before, perhaps they need a refresher of. And we're packaging it in the sense of where that applies in biology or in business for them. And so I mean, this should make the course more relevant, far less abstract to them, because college algebra is a very abstract course. And college algebra is somewhat uninteresting in that it doesn't necessarily, or we don't really spend a lot of time doing really targeted applications for it. And so our goal here for this course is to take that content of math that they need, but make it more enjoyable and more relevant, and especially more relevant to this group of students who is then going to continue on with these applications that we want them exposed to, not for just one semester, but now 2 semesters, to be more relevant to their program, to also hopefully, motivate them for the necessity of these skills, and also to spend time here reminding themselves of these algebra skills because they're going to be packaged in a different way, and perhaps even look a little bit different, look a little bit more unfamiliar. And so perhaps they'll be a little bit more interested and a little bit more engaged. And so that's our goal here. And so that's our new course that students who are aiming for Math 120 for their program of study, the business calculus, this is the starting course, the Algebra with Business Applications. And so you can go on to the next slide, Tracey.
Mm-hmm. It didn't get. Hold on a minute. Changing. There we go.
All right, so business majors, there's one particular one that has lots of options for what the math is. So those are going to have to be handled a little bit separately and based on what their ultimate desires are. But generally speaking, for business majors, we're looking at, where do they start? What do they do? And so if a student is coming in with credit for anything that would be in the pre-calculus college algebra group of courses, so pre-cal 1, pre-cal 2, college algebra, or just general pre-calculus, if they've already got credit for that, we're not going to start them at the new Algebra for Business course. They can go ahead and skip that first course. Unlike the biology, we really want them to start in that first course of the sequence. But for the business majors, if they've already got a foundation in the algebra, we're going to jump them on into the the one semester course of the business calculus. However, if they don't have credit for that, generally speaking, they should do the sequence, the 118, our new course for the Algebra for Business, followed by 120, the course that we've had. Now, I did make a note here at the bottom of this slide. Students who are incoming who are strong in mathematics may be able to test out of that first course, the Algebra with Business Applications. This is a different placement test than the Calculus Readiness Diagnostic Test. The model is the same in that they get a couple of different shots at it with some learning modules in between that can help them improve their placement if they wish to use those. But this is a separate test. And so you see there the URL to follow to enroll that in that. That's in Canvas as well. It's not mandatory that incoming students in this track take this because the entry-level course does not require any sort of override for them. But if they come in strong background in math, would like to just jump on into the Calculus with Business, they can do so with proper placement using this second placement test that the math department has. And now some notes about college algebra. This has been an interesting conversation that we've continued to have in the department, especially last week as we're getting our schedule ready. The intent was always, as far as Math Pathways goes, the intent was always for our traditional college algebra course to be phased out simultaneously with the rollout of the algebra for business. That was always the plan. However, as we went through and looked at what official program requirements were for majors across campus, there were just a couple of lingering departments for which we still are working on finding the appropriate course for their students. One department in particular requires college algebra still, and we're working with them to find the appropriate alternative. There are also a couple of other departments that have majors that have college algebra as an option still. I think statistics, intro stats was an option, college algebra is an option, and some of them still say, you know, for a certain population of our major, we still prefer this course. So we're still working with them to figure out a better alternative because college algebra is going away. Unfortunately, and I will say unfortunately, it's not going to be going away in the fall. College algebra will still be on the books in the fall in a very limited capacity compared to our typical really huge numbers of this course. But Tracey and I cannot stress enough what needs to happen here. This course should not be offered. This course it's no longer offered at the community college level at all. It's a course that it's stale. It doesn't have the sorts of learning objectives that are really transferring to both student success and student success in courses that follow it. And so we're just sticking these research points up here for you guys to really think about and really to drive home the point that college algebra is not the right course for almost everybody who's on campus. So like I said, community colleges have already ditched this course because it was not fulfilling the objectives that were intended for it. But the second bullet point here has some things that are coming from the Math Pathways recommendations. And so this is the set of recommendations that we've been following as was coming from the system level as we were doing some course redesign and restructuring of programs in general. And so this stuff is alarming, and I really need for you guys to let this sink in as you all are talking with your students about what courses to take and specifically which courses not to take. I mean, this says, according to a study, each year in colleges and universities across the United States, we have millions of people who are taking this college algebra and 50% fail. Do you want to stick half of your students in there to fail, especially when it's going away and they can't repeat it for improved GPA? You don't want to do that. Do not stick students in there. Also, completion rates in general for math courses leads to whether or not they're going to get their degree. Basically, if they land in the wrong math course, we are jeopardizing the chance of them finishing their college degree in anything. And this isn't, specific to business or STEM or, general education as far as math goes. This is if they land in the wrong math course and they don't do well in it, they're going to not finish, period. We don't want that. That is not what we're looking for here. Is our student retention is of utmost priority here when we're having trouble, getting and retaining students. Also, this last one is quite alarming too. This is, again, across the country here. We're talking about DFW rates for students who flunk out, get a DF or W in the course. 90% are dismissed from the university, period. Like, we don't want to start them in the wrong spot. And we have identified in the math department that this course is the wrong course for everybody. It needs to go away, and it will go away. And so I wanted to just mention a couple of things that as we've been brainstorming, the last couple of years, we've been really pushing other courses as far as just advising goes. And this is where you all really come into play. We have been talking about more appropriate courses for students that don't have a particular math designated for their program of study. And we made a big push with advertising. We did some flyers. We did a lot of communication with advisors. And yet we still noticed our numbers in the math department were just hugely too big in college algebra. We started with too many and we added more seats. The students want to take this class, and here's why I think they want to take this class. They have heard of the word algebra. That's the bottom line. They have come from high school. They have heard of the word algebra because, maybe it's algebra 1, algebra 2, or that's a topic that they have done in, the math 1, 2, 3 curriculum. They know what algebra is. And so this is problematic for a couple of reasons. They go in thinking that they're familiar with the topic, that the course will be easy. It's a low-level math course. They're just going to get a check mark and move on. They see the material. It's familiar. It's not new stuff for the most part. A few little things are a little bit beyond what goes in the high school curriculum, but not much. And so they have a false sense of security in this course, and therefore they don't end up spending enough time working on the problems, reminding themselves of the nuances of the cases they may be looking at, and they end up doing poorly on exams that then they can't recover from. So they're seeing it as familiar, and they aren't doing enough to be successful in it. And I've taught this course, it's been a few years, but back to back. And the first time I was like, whoa, this was not as good as I should have done. The students should do better. And so I pulled out all the stops and pulled out, did everything I possibly could to support the students, help direct them to better decisions. And I had absolutely no change in my success rate. And that was with being extremely hands-on in a face-to-face setting, not just one of these large lecture or large online courses. I didn't have any more success doing every possible thing I could think of for good practices in teaching. And so I cannot stress enough, we cannot stress enough, students need to not be in this course. But here's the thing, they get to go poke the button as to which course they sign up for. So hear from you all as advisors of, do not take this course, it's going away, this is not appropriate for you. They aren't even going to have any chance but look at the math and say, oh, I'm supposed to take a math, I'll do algebra. Don't let them fall into that trap. You have to let them know that that's not the right spot for them. And so we'll move on to the next slide to figure out what a better spot would be for the general audience. Did you have something to add, Tracey?
Well, I was just going to, there was a comment, a question, and also I was just going to add that again, Beth said it a couple of times, and I just want to echo it. We're making this change because we believe it's in the best interest of the students, not just in math, but in their overall progress to grow toward graduation. So for even as bumpy as it's going to be with this rollout, it is a large population of students that we are looking at to make this change with. It is still going to be worth it for them. It is in their best interest. There are a couple of questions about the 118, 115 being equivalent. Yeah, it's going to be just about like how when we phased out 150 and 151, if they had 150, it didn't have anything to do with whether they could get into 190. They're not the same, and it couldn't be used as a course replacement. So if you have any students that are continuing students that need to retake 115, the fall would be the time to do it. And then let's try to save our freshmen from getting into that in the first place.
I have a question. I'm one of the advisors in the Bryan School, and I work very closely with Jessica Quattrucci and our SOAR, our pre-admission, that kind of stuff. Do you guys recommend us trying to start off our new freshmen with the Math 118 in the business department their very first semester and get them on that path? Okay, I was curious if that's something that you recommended.
Well, I mean, we're trying very closely to follow the Math Pathways recommendations, and they're the ones that North Carolina wrote are based on the work from the Dana Center in Austin, Texas, and other systems have done that work, and they find that students are more successful if they take the math class for the first one that counts for their major in their first year. So for the business folks, if we want them in 120 and that spring semester, 118 in the fall. So, yeah.
And we had a lot of luck this semester with numbers in the STEM direction. See, we kind of started our transition this year in STEM to the one semester pre-cal and calculus with the big push for the calculus readiness diagnostic test. Our numbers were huge. We've never offered that many calculus 1 seats, and we had good success rates in the course too. And so our push across the board for math is these students need to land in math in their first semester. They don't need a warm up. Here's your college experience, take some courses. They need to take math. And to be honest, they're used to having to take math, right? I mean, math is standard curriculum in the high school curriculum. And so, they're used to having kind of a wide variety of courses. Let's not drop out the math. Let's keep the momentum going so that we can get them through that kind of gateway barrier for many, many students in their program of study at all. We need that check mark early. So incoming students should be in their math class, period, in their first year, but definitely these ones that are sequenced, which would be STEM and business and biology, they need to start in that first class their first semester. So, the math department's planning on those numbers, and we're needing to see those students.
Beth and Tracey, I'm thinking a lot about the students that the Students First Office primarily advises, which are our exploratory majors, as well as all of the students who come in thinking they're declared one major and then end up shifting at some point in that first year or even first 45 hours to a completely different major. And I know I think on the next slide, you're probably talking about alternatives to the Math 115. But it sounds like, as an example, you're saying if my office is working with students who are seriously considering business, they should be registered for Math 118 their first fall semester, regardless of what other majors they may or may not be considering.
And it's this, whenever a student comes in and thinks they're going to be one major and then radically switches to something else, there's always going to be an issue about, does everything count? Like right now, if they come in and say they want to be a business major and take 115, they can't then decide they're going to be a chemistry major and have the 115 count.
Right. I think the difference is now about the emphasis on sequencing and how quickly they're being encouraged, or it sounds like we're being encouraged to register students for those math courses. Historically, in my office, when working with exploratory students, we discouraged registering for math until they had a better sense of what major they would end up pursuing, because there was so much risk about taking courses that, quote, wouldn't count, or frankly, taking courses where there was real risk of failure in their first semester. And so it sounds like we may need to think about shifting that philosophy, but I think that's why there's so much importance with gen ed and with programs like Math Pathways, is to ensure that there are these sort of, particularly in their first semester or first 2 semesters, really clean on and off ramps for students that allow for that exploration that's so critical for not just officially exploratory majors, but all students in their first year.
We also do have some ways to go from one to the other that we've already brainstormed and kind of thought through what's appropriate. Like if a student starts in non-bio STEM, so perhaps in 190, and they want to move into the bio track, I mean, we've figured out, you know, what to do with them there. And biology people, and for that matter, business, think about if they're in kind of that biology algebra pre-cal class or the business algebra class, they're developing algebra pre-calculus skills. And so if they're moving into STEM, they're going to take the calculus readiness diagnostic test and perhaps test directly into calculus or calculus with support. And so just because they've taken maybe that first course in a sequence away from STEM does not necessarily put them behind in STEM if they realize after that one course, hey, this math stuff's pretty cool. I think I'm going to stick with, you know, more, you know, STEM-like major instead. Then the calculus readiness diagnostic test, and especially the way that that is set up with the learning modules for where there are some gaps, they can fill in those gaps and then perhaps jump straight into calculus without a wasted semester, or perhaps calculus with the support where we can kind of fill in a few of those gaps too. So there is a little bit of wiggle room for moving across tracks, but the main thing is if we can keep their brain doing math, as long as they, you know, stay, even if they're going to deviate a bit. I mean, you know, going from Math 190, the pre-calculus course, and say, you know what, STEM's not for me, I think I'm going to jump to business. Great, they can do that. They don't have to go from Math 190 to 118. They go from Math 190 to Math 120, and they move on and make their check mark. And so there is a little bit of wiggle room there at the beginning. So I don't think that that fear of change should scare students away from needing to go ahead and just jump into what they think is the appropriate math course. And that math course might help them decide what change. You know, if they're really good at the math and it's really interesting, they might choose to go, you know, a different route. Whereas it would be harder to choose that later on down the track, partly because, you know, success chances drop as they've gone through a gap of time without math too.
I'll just add two things to that. On Beth's point about, you know, maybe they might decide they like math. Maybe they might decide they don't. Maybe they decide that that's not the major that, you know, that they want to do. I'm thinking of like computer science folks, because we normally have so many computer science majors, right? And they come in, they think they want to be computer science, and then they find out, nope, I think I'd rather be over in the School of Business doing ISOM. If we put them in the course in their first semester, and if they find out then that they need to make a major change, we've still got them on the path to successfully graduating on time. And then the idea of waiting on the math class until they make up their mind, as I think, Dana, is what you said with like exploratory majors, it sounds like we are saying pretty much exactly the opposite, because there is just such a connection between the success in that math class and the success in their degree. And, you know, if they come in and they think they're going to be, you know, a music major, and they decide to take contemporary topics, and then they decide they're going to, you know, change to a business major, and they decide they have to take 118, yes, it's a repeating course, but still it's on that path to success. So, yeah. Okay, next slide, ready?
Actually, there were
Sorry.
questions in the chat.
Yeah, the equivalence one.
The department that still requires, you know, the department that still requires Math 115 to our knowledge is nutrition. They have Math 115 and Stats 108 listed as requirements. And so primarily we're offering this for them because those program requirements did not get changed. So these students incoming are still in theory required to take 115. But we've been in communication with nutrition, and that cohort needs to all land in 115 in the fall so that we have some flexibility moving forward. And we're going to continue our discussions with that group to figure out the appropriate alternative, since 115 is going to go away. Psychology is another group that has it not as a specific requirement. The bulletin says 115 or Stat 108. So technically speaking, they have a landing spot in Stat 108, but they're a little bit hesitant because they say, you know, their better students are the ones who get through Math 115 instead. And, my response to that is, well, of course, if only 50% get through, that's inherently your better set of students. This is a correlation, not causation sort of observation. And so we are still talking with them about, what learning objectives they perceive that the students are getting out of 115 and where we can redirect them to get those sort of learning objectives checked off without that particular course. There is one other new class or new major.
Apparel, retail studies, is that one?
I can't remember. It was the one that Sebastian mentioned just recently that came in with Math 115 or Math 112 as options. So again, technically speaking, they have a landing spot. I can look back in my emails to figure out which one that is, but we're in communication with that department as well to figure out, again, what the learning objectives are and what the appropriate landing spot is. If Math 112 is not what the right spot is, what could it be? Yes. CSD. What is CSD?
Communication studies?
Oh, it was the audiology group.
Yeah, communication sciences and disorders.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And we've done a pretty exhaustive search, and I think there's maybe one other small group that had an or that seems okay with the other option other than college algebra. So we're really whittling down who says they need college algebra, and we're working to redirect those so that program requirements can be submitted appropriately for the fall or for next fall for the next round of things, so that we can get back on track here. We've made lots of good progress, but we're having to hold on to this class. I think they are reserving seats for particular majors so that those students particularly land in there. I don't think they're going to have a registration restriction just in general. I mean, because in theory, we're offering the course, students who could repeat it and, improve their grade should be allowed to do that if it's being offered. But the main thing is on advisors, if we can just not get anybody new in there that doesn't need it, that would really be beneficial for the students and for the university and for the department. So that's really where we have to lean on you guys.
Sorry to interrupt. We only have a small amount of control over what the students register for. So the vast majority of students can choose that if they would like to.
Right.
Even against our advice. It happens a lot. They don't always follow through with what we recommend to them. So that's why I asked about adding the written permission required restriction. The students that really do need to go in there can get written permission to enter it, but the students that are not supposed to be there wouldn't be able to register.
We can certainly check. We were hoping when Don and I met with the advising council just a month ago, we were under the impression that we were going to be able to completely do away with 115. And then it was going to be clean and no problem. But then we got a bit worried because there are still a few places on campus that we have a few degrees on campus that we haven't gotten that perfect placement for yet. And so they decided to run those sections until we get that placement. Sebastian is working really hard. He's in contact with all of the different folks that we've identified. And we encourage y'all to reach out if you're one of the folks that need you or have 115 as an option and want to talk about it. We'd love to talk, but we can check and see if that written permission block could be put on 115.
There's another question that came in about will there be enough seats in Math 118 for the business majors? Yes, we know how many business majors we typically have in 115, and all of those numbers are being accounted for in 118 instead. That is going to be the catch-all business group. That's where that cohort needs to land. So we are planning for that and accommodating that for sure.
And just like we did with the 190, with the rollout in the fall, they know that they might have to do some adjusting as we get close, to the start of classes.
There are online sections of 118 planned as well. So we understand that business students, we have some that are online, some that are in person that are planned. It is good to know that it says roughly 25% are online degree students. So we'll make sure that that's accommodated. But I've already, in our preliminary schedule, we've got some online sections of 118 as well. So that should be, appropriate.
There's another question. very specific to nutrition. If an exploratory student who comes in and ends up declaring nutrition in fall of 2021, will Math 115, if it's not offered, but by then we should know where we're saying for them to go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll offer it until it's
Agreed upon as to what the alternative is,
yes.
either officially or unofficially.
Mhm. Yeah. And I mean, and again, it's just us trying to help the students be successful. I know it's a pain, but once we get it figured out, it's going to be so much better for them. So, all right, want to try the next slide?
Sure.
All right, here we go.
So the next slide is, well, where should general audience math folks land? So we've taken care of business, we've taken care of biology, we've taken care of STEM, and there's some other majors that have a few things that are ors or possibilities that are fairly well directed. But if there's not a particular math course or statistics course that is required for a major, it really needs to be a choice between Stats 108 and Math 112. And so I understand students not listening and not following directions, but it's like, even if there could be stuff that doesn't say, hey, sign up for a math class, but it's, hey, sign up for this or this, my guess is students don't know that this or this is not the only options they have, but rather, they're, perhaps they can take any math, but really we're advising them into one of these two. I don't know how to get that messaging to students. You all are the experts there. And I understand students don't always follow directions, believe me. But this is really the directions that need to be given to students who don't have a particular math course that is required for their program of study. And here's why. So Stats 108, that's just kind of a good course for really anybody. I was a math major as an undergraduate student, and a course like elementary probability and statistics was required of every graduate of the whole campus. It was a smaller school, but that was the only math gen ed course that the whole campus could take, including math majors who had to start with this general education course. And then of course we had upper level division things that we had to go that kind of followed up on this. But elementary prob and stats is really a good general course, a good general knowledge. It helps students be able to read statistics and understand what's being said. That's in news. It's a good general knowledge course, and it's accessible. It relies on some things that are familiar, as well as some new topics, which then entice the students to need to spend some time with that, and they spend some time and they learn it and they go for it. But it doesn't rely quite as heavily on pre-knowledge as even college algebra does. College algebra requires that you know a little bit about a lot to be able to be successful in this. And for the intro stats, you can come in and we can teach you plenty of math without requiring that you have proficiency in a wide variety of things. And where there might be deficiencies, we can fill in the gaps strategically and on point with what's the learning objectives for the course. So that's one option that's an excellent choice just for the general population. But also another course is contemporary topics in mathematics. And one of the things that's really excellent about this course is we end up doing pretty sophisticated math, but we do it without requiring that they know a whole lot about anything coming in. And so and one of the real pluses of this particular one is it's cheap for students because we wrote the textbook. And so that's really an enticing thing too, to get their math course out of the way, where we've already come up with the curriculum. Does have some online homework that we've written the problems for. So we've put a lot of effort as the department into this course to tailor to student success, but also to lean in on the mission of trying to keep costs down for students as well. And so this course has various topics that are taught But again, each one we come at with not a whole lot of pre-knowledge required. So we don't really require that they retained all of their K-12 math curriculum to be able to be successful. I mean, many of the topics we could take, you know, a motivated middle schooler and teach them the whole course. And so students can come into that course in a place being prepared to learn that material and not overwhelmed with it. And so these two courses have been specifically designed based on content as well as delivery for general audience students. And so these are far better suited than college algebra for the general audience. And some programs require one or the other as specific. I know that one of the elementary ed programs require 112. We got that cohort into 112. I know some of the ones that have Math 115, the college algebra, have as an or elementary prob and stats. And so choosing the elementary prob and stats would be what we would recommend. Especially as we're continuing conversations for what the or should be if you want to include something else.
Just to add on one thing Beth said, the thing about 112, Sebastian, you can see that in the first bullet point there for 112, see how he says they basically have to do addition, subtraction, multiplication of integers. So as Beth said, the computations aren't the most complex computations in the world, but what it gives them is really good insight into these other aspects. I mean, the public key cryptography part is so fascinating, you know, and then just some of the, they hit the other topics and they get to understand it because they're not bogged down with the computations. So, as far as the fail rate, yeah, I mean, I can give you the links to the publications if you want them. Yeah, it's in our recommendations for the state, but then also the Dana Center also has a whole bunch of stuff about it. So, and I think it's I can't think off the top of my head why it would be a problem to put the written position on 115. Can you, Beth?
No, I mean, that was one of the things in our conversation, internal conversation. I was like, well, can we only reserve seats for like these majors who are hanging in there or special permission? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I am all for having people be very cognizant about signing up for this course. You know, those who need grade replacement, those who need it for their program of study, not just those who, hey, I've heard algebra, I want to take that. Not a good plan. So, I mean, I'm all for that as a solution if that can be a solution.
So we'll check into that this afternoon. Oh, last slide.
Yeah, it's just some, that link there is for a listing of all of our kind of entry level courses there. Some of the slides that we have here have been pulled from that landing page about the particular courses, especially the new business course, the business algebra course, and those two general audience courses. We pulled from that. That particular page also has, you know, on the side also links for the different, you know, the math placement tests for the business folks and the calculus readiness diagnostic test for the STEM folks. So that is a good starting place there too for the math department for your information for advising students, but also pointing students to as well.
All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing. And there we go. Questions on all that fun.
I confirm that my logic is working properly for this. So for STEM majors, the question that we need to ask first is, are you thinking about biology? And then if the answer to the question is yes, then we need to say, okay, so you're thinking about biology. Are you also thinking about a pre-professional program? because if they're STEM, they need the CRDT. If they're bio, no pre-professional, they need 183. But if they're bio professional, they need CRDT again. Is that correct?
Right. And also, Beth, correct me if I'm wrong, but if they're bio and they're going to be pre-professional, they can still take 183 as the prerequisite for Calc 1 196, which is what they would need for the pre-professional program. But then they could take advantage of the 183 with the connections to the bio. It would still serve, it would still be enough to be the prereq for regular calculus.
Awesome. Thank you. I apologize. I have another question.
That's
I'm
fine.
I'm that person. I know I'm that person. Can you talk about the phase out of 191, 292?
Yeah, so what's happening is we have 196, which we're actually calling Calculus A, just to help you guys out a little bit. Our new sequence, as it's being phased in, is going to be Calc ABC to go with the phase out of Calc 1, 2, 3, 4, just to help everybody's brain in this. So what's happening starting in this coming fall, no more Calc 1, but we introduce Calc A.
Did we do it?
Spring, we have no more Calc 2, but we introduce Calc B. And then the following fall, no more Calc 3, we introduce Calc C. And then that next spring, Calc 4 will be phased out. So that's as the new one comes in, the old one goes out, just semester by semester as it would be needed.
And I'm just wondering, Beth, why am I thinking that we wanted them to put ABC and then somehow or another it didn't end up actually putting the letters?
Oh, did they not?
I think it actually went on into 196, 296, 396.
As Calc 1, 2, and 3?
Mm-hmm.
I could have Tom check that. He gets in that.
Yeah.
I really thought that. I mean, I knew that was the plan. Ugh.
I'm in the system too, and it's got the A, the B, and the C. You're fine.
Oh, it does? Excellent. Oh, thank goodness. Okay.
And
Good.
eventually we'll probably just change that back to 1, 2, 3 once all of the old ones are out. But that was just in the transition. We thought that would be smarter and less confusing for students and advisors, and us for that matter.
Yeah, just get it all straight. Anybody got a group of students that currently are taking 115 and want to talk about other options or?
I'm correct that all the options we've talked about today do carry or will carry, pending approval, perhaps MAC markers or competencies. Is that correct? Okay.
This may be a more in the weeds question, but something that just came to mind that I don't know if there's pathways already being put into place for this, but I'm thinking through, I work with a lot of exploratory students who pick minors that are very different from their majors. So I'm thinking about, like, for a student who might be declaring a bio major but a business minor, are there ways to kind of approach that conversation with a student, and which one? I mean, obviously I would say they would work on the bio math classes first, but I didn't know if there was ways to make that easily, like one class easily apply to both when the base requirements are very different math courses.
Right, but it would probably it's probably something that we really do need to think through, because I know a lot of times with like minors, we don't allow substitution of classes, but whereas if they were a double major, the 184 versus the 120, we could probably go either way. So I'm making a note of that one. You said bio major, business minor.
Yeah, that's the example that came to mind.
That's a good one. My inclination would be to say that right now, the business track accepts 196 or 191 Cap 1 in place of 120. So it's just, would they accept 184 as well? So that would just be I guess a program decision. But that also is a good point. We discovered just a few weeks ago that there's a population of students who have maybe history as their major, but are pre-professional. And that's the one we really got to look for placement. I didn't realize it, and I had like 2 or 3 in just a little spell, and I was like, oh my. So those are the kinds of people that we really want to find and help make sure that we get them in the appropriate track that'll cover both bases.
Can I ask a clarifying question back about the grade replacement 118 versus 115? If 115 is so bad and really not suited for anyone at any time to take, what's the apprehension of just setting them as equivalent for a couple semesters, like Maria said, so that a student won't need to re-enroll in 115? And then they could take 118 instead, replace it, and once you're phased through those students doing grade replacements, you could remove that equivalency that's internal in Banner, I suppose. But it just seemed like there was such a grim picture of 115 painted that seems like a really easy approach to avoid students taking it just for the sake of grade replacement.
Sounds awesome to me. I will certainly, we'll send, I'm making a list that we're going to send up the ladder when we're out of here. I mean, I would love that myself, but again, we've still got the issue of if the student's degree program will accept 118 as opposed to 115. So we might still have that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've
So I'm
also
thinking
got,
business.
I mean, we've also got the issue that and this is not from any sort of knowledge base, but when we are looking at Math 115, college algebra, I mean, before deciding to throw it away, we were looking at, well, can we redo it so that it is, more appropriate and still the quote same course? But college algebra comes with such a loaded set of understanding of what the concept is. Honestly speaking, we don't even cover the breadth of what most universities do cover in college algebra, because we leave out exponentials and logarithms, and we push that off to Math 120. And so I wonder about I don't know about the legality, but maybe also the reasonableness of equivalency, just in that the curriculum itself is different, and college algebra comes with a loaded set of curriculum that I don't know about that and how that's going to fall. I like the idea for students and, that sort of idea, but strictly speaking, they are not the same course, which is why we're hoping one that is new will be successful. We couldn't call it college algebra because it's inherently different. And so that's where I'm just not sure where that would land.
Yeah. But we'll pass that on up to Sebastian. He's our undergraduate director, and he can kind of look into that and see. I mean, it does seem like a reasonable fix, but Beth is right. They are not the same course. Again, so because we're hoping this one's going to be more successful, for more students will be more successful in it.
Other questions? for either the advisors as we're working across with students across multiple disciplines and schools and colleges, or for Tracey and Beth.
I did
We have
just,
a lot of, oh,
I was going to say, I just did find the flow chart that was in our planning stuff, Tracy. Math 183, the first of the biology sequence, can lead directly as a prerequisite into Calculus A, our new calculus class, but the Math 118 does not. However, the 120 would, but 118 with the calculus readiness diagnostic test could still,
Right.
because
That's like with 115.
right. So, and with 118, they will have been exposed to a large amount of pre-calculus, not, the trigonometry stuff, and there would be some emphasis change, but especially with the learning modules in the calculus readiness diagnostic test, if they start in the business 118 algebra course and need to change into a STEM track, then it's definitely calculus readiness diagnostic tests where they should be encouraged to use those learning modules and improve their placement so that they didn't, quote, waste a semester too. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, that one track goes directly into the other, which makes sense. The biology and STEM are more closely related than the business and STEM would be, but there is still a way to get students, keep students on track to get through that calculus in that first year if they make that change, and they can sink some time into the diagnostic test.
I have a follow-up question about the math placement, not the readiness test. I work with online students, almost all of which are transfers, and a large percentage bring in Math 143, which is Math 112 here. Do you recommend, if I see a student that has a math transfer credit, having them take the test? Or if not, are there certain questions that I don't know how to really gauge well their math acuity to see if they're a good fit for the placement exam? So if you have some recommendations how to do that at that kind of initial discussion with them, to see whether I should just send them to 118 versus have them take the placement if they have some type of math transfer credit that didn't meet our requirements.
They could still take it. It won't hurt anything.
Okay.
We could go with that. My experience though, and this is different from a lot of other schools, but from what I've heard in the discussions with the Math Pathways work, our students don't tend to want to try to place above. They want to start in their lowest course. So if you had a student that came in with credit for 143, going to be a business major, I would say, hey, 118, but if you don't want to start there, you can take this placement test and give them the option. But my experience is most of the time they jump into the lower course.
Yeah, and I was going to say students probably have a better feel for how they are at math and probably are going to place themselves lower rather than higher of what their understanding is. And so just having the conversation, I see that you've had some math, know that there is a placement test that will allow you directly into the second semester. If you feel, like you want to see where you are and see if that would be appropriate for you, you can take this. If you want to start and just, start with the basics here with the algebra and then move to the calculus, that would be okay. But let them kind of gauge what their level of comfort is, because if they go in like a scared puppy to the second course, that's not, even if they could theoretically be prepared, that may be a bit of a barrier also. And so, maybe even asking them just to kind of self-assess what their feelings are about math in general. If people are, math, I like math, I'm pretty good at math, and see how they place. But if need that warm-up course.
And oh, sorry.
In the vein of the pathways really promoting having your first major math done in your first year, a lot of our transfers are juniors. And then they transfer in and the 115 is full and they can't get it in their first semester. And so then they're taking their first math for their degree, their second semester junior year, which is required for accounting 1, which 1 is required for 2 before they're even admitted into their major.
Right.
And so is there any way to reconcile that emphasis that we're giving to freshmen to get it in the first 30 hours where we can also accommodate that transfers aren't waiting so late because of availability and the timing of registration?
Yes, if you just add the phrase first 30 hours on campus. That's
Okay.
yeah. Sometimes I don't say that when I start saying the whole spiel. But yes, we do recognize that with transfer students, it might be a different, they're coming in with different courses that are transferring in. So we say the first 30 hours that they're here with us. That meets the spirit of what we're trying to do to get them.
Okay.
And then I was just going to say calculus readiness diagnostic test, and then the placement test. The students hear that word test and tend to freak out. And if we could get rid of that word, we would. I mean, we're having to keep them, one's a diagnostic and one's a placement, just to keep the two populations separate. But there is no harm in taking either of them. And honestly, it's an opportunity to improve with everything that we have in place for them to improve on any topics that they don't score well on. So if we can get that kind of that message apart, don't be scared of this thing. It's good.
It's not meant to be a barrier. It's meant to be an opportunity for improvement and filling in gaps and getting them where they're most appropriately fit. And so if we can skew the idea of this as a barrier sort of thing, then I think that can be beneficial to the students, because the way that it's set up, basically we want them to log in and try once first, because if you don't figure out where you even stand to begin with, you don't know what to do to improve your standing. And so this isn't like a high stakes one and done sort of placement test. It's a come in, let's see where you are, let's identify weaknesses. And then we've even it's almost like a whole course. We have, these modules where, depending on where these weaknesses are identified based on that first encounter with the test, they can, we have videos, we have open source textbooks, we have practice quizzes that they can go through and work through. And all of this is free. Like, this was developed using, somebody else's model, but we coded, Don Yasaki coded all of this, and grad students and faculty went through and tested all of it. And so, this is, publisher quality content that we've done from scratch here, and it's course-like. And so if we can just get the students in and say, you know what, go take it once, see where you are, figure out where your weaknesses are, spend time, learn from them, and then when you feel prepared, do it again. And we do overrides after each encounter with it. So after the first, if they place where they want to, or if they land where they feel is appropriate for them, then they can just stop there. But we are encouraging the continued engagement with those learning modules, so that not only can they improve their placement possibly, but even think about, even if they land in the entry-level course for STEM pre-calculus, well, what if they started with a 15 on the first attempt? Well, they may arguably not be prepared for the pre-calculus course. And so if they can improve their background prior to landing in the course, their success in that course even would increase too. So we're trying for it to be an opportunity of learning, not a barrier for course enrollment.
And I just wanted to add, we've actually put a lot of thought into this process. One of the Math Pathways recommendations is that you use multiple measures to place students. So high school GPA, SAT, anything you can think of to use as that placement point. And for our students, there was no correlation. There was no correlation between high school GPA and their performance in their first math class, or their SAT score and their performance in their first math class. If you work with transfer students, you know that the community colleges have gone to a very, it's pretty strict. This is your high school GPA. This is where you can take your math class. So they're using high school GPA to determine placement and whether they have to have the co-requisite course that goes with it. With our population of students, we went back several years and we just could not get anything to be predictive. So that's why we went for this model of, okay, take it once, improve, take it again. It's almost a measure of perseverance, really. I mean, because they can spend as much time as they want to remediating and working on the problems and studying before they take it the next time. And the Beth, did they change the
They did. And let me speak to the rationale for this.
Yeah.
So, knowledge is fluid, right? We have knowledge that comes in, we have knowledge that goes away. So if we are doing this sort of placement diagnostic thing for that upcoming semester, we really need to know, and they need to know, what their level of understanding and retention is of topics right before they take the class. And so it's not, again, not as a barrier that we're saying you've got to do this the semester that you plan to enroll and they expire, as a barrier thing, but as a way to think about where you are at the current time with your math background and your math understanding and your math retention, so that we know that those students are, relevantly in the correct course. So like if you had a freshman come in and they placed into Math 120 and they spent 3 years not doing Math 120, do we think they are still ready to do Math 120? Maybe not. Maybe, depends on their retention. And so that's why we're doing this by the semester. And so we actually have it coded in Canvas that says, as a parentheses in this, for fall 2021. And so these will be recycled in between each registration period. We plan for them to be available prior to registration opening through the drop add period. After that, we'll close those out, download the grade books for, studying. We want to see how these are actually doing with leading to student success and adjusting as we go too. And then opening up a new one for the next registration period.
And there was a question about the students knowing how they place. In their grade book, when they get their score, it says sign up for blah, blah. So it literally has that phrase. They don't just get the numerical grade, but in their Canvas grade book, it will have that phrase. And if any of you are interested in, seeing it, being a part of it, just let us know. We can give you observer access to it so that you can get in and see. But Dawn worked really hard to make sure it literally says for the students. And then there's a column. Beth, can they see the column that says that the override's been entered?
I want to say yes.
Yeah.
I could look and see, but I'm pretty sure they can see yes, because we are completing these overrides systematically daily. So we promise, within 2 business days, the override will be in Genie. And this is for both tests. So for Math 190, Math 181 with 196, Math 196, Math 120, all of those are getting done in Genie daily, so that students can so that that's not on you all to check and then put in overrides, and mistakes can happen, different confusion can happen. This is what's happening in the math department. They take the test within 2 business days, they can register for the course. That is, and we do put in there. I mean, I think the grade, there's some limitations on the grade book. I think it's maybe a 1 versus 0 or something. Yes, it is. No, it's not.
Or for that the override's been entered. Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
But
Still
yeah,
better than guessing. So
yeah.
Yeah. But it does specifically tell them which classes, and they can always go down. So if they place into 196 and they're like, oh, heck no. I mean, they could do 196 and 181. They could go back and do 190. We enter the overrides for the course they place into and the ones underneath it. So.
Is that support class, is that just a 0 credit recitation class?
3 hours of credit. This is my baby. I've taught it every semester. I developed all course materials. It's free to them. We've got a great online version of it going right now, and I'm super excited about it. It's a 3 credit hour course. And part of the choice of making it a 3-hour credit course is so that we can help students carve out enough time in their schedule to devote to math. So my expectations outside of course are far less than those for the course I'm supporting, helping those students who may need some extra time and may need some extra attention and may need some extra office hours and math help center hours and time watching, videos and materials that we've created for the calculus course. That's why we chose the 3 hours, so that it's not so that they then overload their schedule. It's so that they can take it in lieu of another course to help better ensure success in this high risk course of the calculus A.
If a business student is like drowning in business calculus and they've taken it a couple times, would that be something you feel like may be beneficial to them, or they're really just utilizing the Math Help Center as
It's
their best?
specifically designed with the STEM Calculus A. The two courses go hand in hand. I'm one of the coordinators for the Calculus A, so like I know what the students are doing in that particular course. It's not just a generic how to be a student, how to be a math student, how to do some math. It's specifically designed alongside the calculus, so it's not relevant to business calculus.
And with, we had the option of, did we want to go with the support course for business calc, or did we want to try this 118 model? And it just seemed like our attention should first be devoted to phasing out 115, getting something else better in its place. That could be something in the future, a co-rec for 120. But we're trying to get through the changes as quickly as we can, but it was a finite number of us working on it. So it seemed like the 118 was the better first choice to where to direct our efforts.
I know that students in the past weren't supposed to earn credit for 115 and 150. Do you know if a student has earned credit for one of those? Can they also earn credit for 118 if they feel like they transferred one of those in but feel unprepared for 120? Is that something they could take additionally, do 118 before they do 120?
I believe so, because didn't we make 115 and 150 equivalent, Tracy?
I'm sitting here writing that down. Because
I was thinking that we had at least an internal equivalency between 115 and 150. And so without the equivalency, wouldn't you think then that a student could take 118, which might also, Tracy, be something that we have to think about. If we do this equivalency for grade replacement, we can't do equivalency for course credit, double counting. If they transfer in 115, maybe they can't take 118 then. So that's another aspect that we may need to really consider.
Yeah. And then that also might get into even if it's not for credit, is it in their best interests? We might have to,
I still have a feeling they're very different courses. And so I'm not sure that equivalency makes sense.
191, so you switch track to 191. So there's a question about, could a business student switch between 120 and go back over and take the calculus sequence so they had access to the support course? Technically, yes, but you're talking about, I would compare business calculus to Calc A. It makes me want to think of like comparing Bio 105 to Bio 111. It's that level of, the major versus the non-major. Folks that are in the business track don't have to do all the trig. They don't, they haven't been introduced to the exponential and logarithmic stuff until they actually get into 120. All of that stuff is assumed pre-knowledge when you get into Calc 1. So yes, they would have the benefit of the support course, but you're talking about a more in-depth course, if that answers your question. If you have somebody that is continuously going through the courses and struggling, it would help have them reach out to us so that we can kind of identify them. Sometimes we don't know that. Like I've had students that have taken 115 for 3 semesters and then come over and tried 150 or 151 or 190. And we don't necessarily know that they're stuck in that pattern. And if they are encouraged to reach out to us, we can better help them.
Another thing to keep in mind too is the Calc A, the new course, is 4 hours also. So not only is it, it's going to be more than our 3 hour. Like we're adding another quarter content, really. We usually cover 3 chapters. We're going to cover 4 in the 4 hour course. And so it's going to be a course that has significant time and attention commitments. It's not an easy course. We're putting in all the support that we can. We flipped the course. We've got the learning materials online. We're doing a lot of great things for it, but it's going to be even more of an involved course than our traditional Calc 1 has been, which is an involved course.
Yeah. And Shannon's point about whether or not they can be taken for credit impacting financial aid. Yes, that's what we run into a lot with 181 as well. You know, trying to figure out how that works. Especially like when they wanted to, if they took 181 and Calc 1 and were unsuccessful in Calc 1, and then they had to take it again and wanted to take 181s, and there was an issue about how that 181 counted. And yes, yeah. And trying to navigate all of that stuff is so, but, you know, we're trying to do what's in the best interest for the students, but then we also realize, of course, you know, they got to have 12 hours that count so they can get that financial aid. So, yeah, we're open to all ideas.
All right, we're coming up at the end of our time, but I want to make sure that we've answered as many questions as have percolated to the surface today, or at least have a running list of questions to be answered. So last call for right now. Any lingering questions or concerns?
Dana, I know you're recording this, but is there any way in addition to the recording that we could get like the PDF versions or something like that of the slides, specifically those flow charts at the beginning?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely, Tracy and Beth, I'll reach out to you and we'll get those in a format that we can put up on the Advisors Academy website. Thanks for offering those and for that suggestion, Kristen.
And the links too, I was thinking those links that we put in for the appropriate math placement test and the calculus readiness diagnostic test, and those get people landed in the right spot too.
Yeah. And we stole some of the flow charts from Samantha Rayner, so she gets credit for making those.
All right, everyone. Well, we'll wrap it up there. If you didn't get a chance to officially sign in and sort of log your attendance today, please be sure to do that before you log off. Our next coffee and conversation is not until the end of March, when we'll be joined by colleagues from career and professional development to talk about integrating academic advising and career counseling. So be on the lookout for more information on that in the coming weeks. And Tracy and Beth, thanks so much for sharing the information and your expertise and fielding all our questions. I know we've gotten a lot of answers today and appreciate all your work on this as you keep student success at the forefront of all your efforts. So thanks again.
Okay.
We've enjoyed it.
Thanks so much, everybody. See you next time.